So this is what I was mentioning earlier. This is the Cuphead footage. This we just earlier on stream, we were looking through all of these videos of like old 2006, 2010, 2015 news stories and game stories. And there was this little segment that was just recommended to me, and it's phrased and framed in a quite mean way. Dumbass journalist can't get past tutorial. But this has become a meme in the games industry for the problem with games journalists, which is that a lot of them write on games, but they don't play them or they're not good at them. And so this clip went viral, and it's painful to watch because it just keeps going, and he just can't get over the jump until he like kind of collects himself, figures out the dash, jumps down, and then the next struggle kicks off. It's really hard to watch. Jacob must have a lot of trouble watching this because Jacob actually can like speed run Cuphead. He's actually quite good at it. So I'm sure that this is difficult. But I wanted to know the backstory of this, and basically goes back to 2017. And this is a tidbit. So this is from 8 years ago, the original post. I was browsing YouTube and stumbled into what seemingly was an endless pit of videos about some journalist who sucks at Cuphead. What's the full story? And David at work replied, Dean Takahashi's Cuphead gameplay video comes on the heels of many criticisms levied against gaming journalists, one of which is that many of them aren't sufficiently skilled to provide a valid assessment of the games they play. Polygon's Doom video from last year is another example, which was another one at the time, which you might have forgotten about. But basically in 2016, there was a video on Polygon where they posted some gameplay, and it was just so god awful that it kind of, for a lot of people, disqualified them from any sort of critique or discussion on a game. Another more recent example of this same phenomenon would be like the IGN Arc Raiders review or preview thing that they did. And this whole video is just like kind of unhinged because, for one, it looks like it's being played on a potato, which already will get people to kind of dismiss your video if you're working for a 19 going on 20 million sub channel. The standard should be higher, just in terms of presentation. So there's that. A lot of the statements also just didn't make any sense at all, comparing it to like Fortnite and stuff. It was just bizarre. They just had some like really bizarre things that they said. Like there's this, which I think I'm about at the right spot. Oh yeah, the audio wasn't synced up. There's a lot of stuff.
Overhearing sounds or covering all windows in a room, your 3-person squad will find plenty of tension waiting in most buildings. Cleverly designed maps draw the characters in. The most lucrative resource hubs are clearly marked, and players flock to the richest areas looking for food or hover between the treasures and the extraction areas,
like
waiting
right here.
Dipsable, but it all kind of feels like they gave Fortnite a coat of DayZ grime and moved on.
Fortnite a coat of DayZ grime? Like what? And then you pair this with gameplay people find lacking, terrible presentation in terms of the video quality and everything else, and people dismiss the opinion. And it kind of fits the narrative that there are people working in games journalism who are not gamers and are just there to like work on, on it from a journalistic side. And so because they're not gamers, their opinions can be or should be dismissed. That's kind of the debate that's going on here. He continues, instead, many video game critics brand themselves as cultural critics, so even though they can't play the games they critique, their assessments are still compiled into review aggregate websites like Metacritic, where the scores often have real-world influence on things like awards and how much the developers receive in royalties. For example, bonuses are often limited to certain Metacritic scores. So there's the famous story of Fallout New Vegas, which the developers were about to get a bonus, but they missed the Metacritic threshold for that bonus by 1 point. So I think it was like they needed to hit an 84 and they got 83, or they needed to hit 85 and they got 84. And so therefore they were dismissed and didn't get their bonus. So it has an impact. And another example would be like, Eurogamer and their KCD2 review. They gave it the effective score of 6 out of 10, like a D. And it's just one of the most brain dead things I've ever read. We won't dwell on it too much, but it's basically a lot of complaining over how Kingdom Come games work, which is that they don't really hold your hand and they expect you to think. Lumps and bumps in its plot. It's very much business as usual. Oh yeah. That said, no amount of time will ever make the interminably bad hang that is Hans Capon any more palatable to me. This boorish buffoon almost pips GoldenEye's Natalia as the companion I want most to see roasted doused in the fires of eternal damnation, and he is easily the game at its most detestable, a lewd shrimp of a public school posh boy whose childish, throw his toys out the pram approach to any kind of obstacle made me wish I could stick him with the pointy end as soon as possible, or let him hang when given the chance, just like I could with the rest of its murderable cast. But you're stuck with this turd of a human being for the long haul, unfortunately, which puts as much strain on my will to carry on as the game's obtuse stats systems. It's like there's also like literally the whole character arc is about him like becoming grounded and like losing that and like maturing. That's a huge component of it. So it's almost like you didn't play the game, but whatever. Cutscenes on the verge of Kojima levels of indulgence at places, with several scenes feeling bloated and overwritten. I almost overwritten in the context of this review is kind of ironic, but anyway, it just goes on. And I believe this was the same outlet that complained that the first game was too white, lacking in diversity.
Donated $10 through
Just
Super
crazy.
Chat.
And then Kyle, thank you for the 5. It's really funny that what IGN said about Arc Raiders is exactly what everyone else said about Marathon, more so with their Marathon review. Well, and this is part of the problem for some of these big companies, right? Is that they go and they don't have, okay, how do I want to say this? Like when I make a video, you know, it's me and my opinion, and I played the game, and so this is what I'm talking about. So you say, oh, Luke liked this game, Luke hated this game, Luke made fun of this game, Luke pointed this out, because it's me. With IGN, it's a big company and they assign different people to it. So for example, there was an entire video breaking down the IGN Yote review and like defending it. Yeah, it's on a secondary channel. Why we gave it an 8 out of 10. IGN Games. Yeah, it's a second channel. That's why.
That novelty is not there at the same level because these are sequels, right? They're building on everything their predecessor did. And so you lose that novelty, but what you gain in return is a whole bunch of improvements in visuals and storytelling and in gameplay and quality. And so like there's that kind of push and pull there. And I'm with you all. Like I think that I ultimately like the story better in this game. Even if I did find myself frustrated at times in the way that story gets doled out and the pacing specifically, but I really like the characters in this game. I really like their interactions.
And this is the difficult thing, is that it's basically one guy that is reviewing and representing a 20 million sub channel. And this is a discussion on their secondary 600,000 sub channel. But as a result, that one opinion gets blown up as representing the entire company. And with this, it was a similar thing where like this one guy kind of was then used to represent and dismiss the industry as a whole. But this is interesting. So they responded to it. VG Facts offered some broader discourse. So on August 24th, 2017, a video was uploaded by gaming news outlet VentureBeat, where the lead writer Dean Takahashi recorded gameplay demonstration of him playing at Gamescom, the Gamescom 2017 demo for Cuphead, due to him being the only one on staff at the event. He specializes in general industry articles, strategy games, and first and third person shooters, and normally does not cover platformers, side-scrolling games, because by their outlet's own admission, he was extremely bad at them. This footage became notorious for the first 2.5 minutes, where he struggles to complete the game's tutorial before struggling to play for another 23 minutes under the conditions that were made intentionally easier for the game's demo, such as increased health and instant access to some stronger unlockable charms like spread. VentureBeat knew the footage was bad, but uploaded it anyways and drew attention to Takahashi's poor gameplay in the video title, calling it shameful. Jesus. However, VentureBeat initially did not explain the full context of the footage in the video description, and due to Gamescom being held 1 month prior to Cuphead's release, the clip was passed around out of context, leading to people to believe that he was doing a full review of the game and trying to make a point of it being too difficult. In reality, the video was posted alongside an article about the demo by Takahashi to VentureBeat that regularly acknowledges his poor skill at the game. He also called Cuphead a fun game that showed, quote, why making hard games that depend on skill is like a lost art, end quote. Regardless, the footage still drew extremely negative backlash and harassment towards him and claims that he was unfit to be a games journalist. Takahashi's response to the controversy spurred more controversy after he accused people of attacking the footage of being connected to the 2014 Gamergate movement, when 1 week prior to responding, he published an article promoting the idea of a leisure economy that stems from game journalists, among others, being paid to play games, and promoting the fact that he had been reviewing games for 21 years up to that point. And this is also just like something that's been discussed in many different factions. There's other examples and pieces that people feel important to note, such as the point that it was noted that Takahashi had first scored the first Mass Effect game poorly when reviewing it for a newspaper. It was later discovered that he had ignored the tutorial and gotten significant way into the game without assigning any skill points to his characters. And I think that's why this comes up. The reason why the general gaming public will dismiss a journalist or even journalism and reviews in general from outlets is because you don't know what you're getting. You know, you don't know if this person knows what they're playing, knows what they're doing. You just kind of have to take it on faith, or you have to do extensive research into the individual reviewer that's working for that outlet and what they've reviewed previously and what they gave it. Because I do think it's a problem if like for example, somebody that is notoriously terrible at video games, like if there is, say, a streamer who is awful at video games, everything he touches, but he's really, really good at a very specific mobile game that is pay to win, I will listen to his opinion when he talks about that mobile game. But if he starts to try and critique like the balance of Expedition 33's combat, I'm gonna roll my eyes, because like he's diminished the value of his opinion by demonstrating that he is bad at this or is unwilling to engage with it, doesn't look at tutorials. Like maybe he's just playing games plastered drunk every day. I don't know. But if there's consistent evidence that this guy is really bad at the games and is not willing, like he's not trying, even watching tutorials, reading tutorials or anything, then I'm not going to take that opinion as seriously. Whereas if there's somebody that's like really good at fighting games and they're critiquing injustice, okay, I'm interested in that. There's somebody that's really, really freaking good, like Let Me Solo Her. If he has comments on the new FromSoft game, I'm interested in hearing what that is. You know, I want to know what his opinion is. But if somebody is not good at those or is not competent, maybe not an expert in that field, you shouldn't take that critique necessarily seriously. And I think this whole thing with the Cuphead event is so fascinating as a point in gaming history, because it's still something that comes up now close to a decade later. And it is an honest like misunderstanding. It was spread without context that this was the only guy at the event, so he filmed footage and they tried to use it and people misunderstood the context. But the reason it went viral and the reason it still is top of mind today is because it represents something that people have seen in a lot of other instances, where, like they said, discovering that he got significantly into Mass Effect and didn't realize you had to put skill points on your characters, and so was complaining that the game was too hard or unbalanced when he's not doing that. In the same way that, like, if you're complaining about Elden Ring being too hard, but it turns out you never upgraded weapons or upgraded your Estus flask, like all of a sudden, then I'm probably not going to take your opinion as seriously, because clearly you're not critiquing it with full understanding of what you're critiquing. And it's like I said, a point that is still discussed even today, where outlets and their reviews will be dismissed because the individual journalist or reviewer has either a bad track record or expresses a lack of understanding of the genre or the individual games. And it still happens today. And I think it's going to continue happening. And it's why most people are waiting for the reviews and impressions of individual creators that they know and respect their opinions. A lot of people waiting to hear what like SkillUp says about a game before deciding to buy it. Some people will wait for what I say about a game for some reason before they decide to buy it. And I think that that's where it's moving towards on an individual level. But I think the industry is still caught in this like 2005 way of thinking where like Metacritic scores still depend on these massive outlets and what they scored. Even though the outlet is massive, it could be somebody's very first time ever reviewing a video game, and they are being given the power to affect the Metacritic score, which can affect the chance of being nominated for Game of the Year. It can affect the bonuses for employees. And this is somebody that has not gone through years of grinding as many YouTubers have to build up an audience, and an audience that kind of respects their opinion. They just landed a job and got assigned a review. Some of them are very capable, don't get me wrong. Some of the people who review for big outlets are very smart, are very good at games, and are sharp as a tack. But the point is, some of them are not. I think that's the key. I think that's the key consideration. So I think IGN, or I think rather like Metacritic, should sort of rework their system and find a way to include individual reviewers more. OpenCritic will do it sometimes, where like I think ACG posts his stuff to OpenCritic, I think. I could be wrong about that. But I think that they should do that more and more, because more and more individuals are choosing to evaluate a game's quality not based on what IGN gave a game in terms of review score, but based on what an individual creator gave it. And at that point, I think that they should start to include individual reviewers much more in like Metacritic, in the panel voting selection process for Game of the Year and stuff like that.
He took my thing.